My fiancé said medical school was too complex for my female brain and demands I take hospitality instead. I proved him wrong at his own workplace. Me and Ryan had been together for 4 years and engaged for 6 months when I got accepted into medical school. I'd been working toward this since high school, taking all the right classes, volunteering at hospitals, studying for the MCAT for months, getting letters of recommendation from professors who believed in me. When the acceptance letter came, I was crying happy tears thinking about finally achieving my dream of becoming a doctor. I called Ryan immediately expecting him to be proud of me. Instead, he got quiet and said we needed to talk about this in person. When he came over that night, he sat me down like he was about to deliver bad news. He said medical school wasn't realistic for our future together. He said it was 7 years minimum between school and residency, and that would mean putting our life on hold. I told him we could make it work. Lots of couples did. He shook his head and said those couples didn't last because the woman got too focused on her career and forgot about her family. He actually used the word forgotten like I'd abandon him the second I put on a white coat. He suggested I look into something more practical, like human resources or maybe hotel management. He said those were good careers for women because they had regular hours and wouldn't be too demanding when we had kids. I thought he was joking at first, but his face was completely serious. He pulled out his phone and showed me statistics about divorce rates for female doctors and how many of them ended up single and childless. He said he didn't want that for me, for us. I told him being a doctor had been my dream since I was 8 years old, watching my grandmother die from cancer while her doctors saved her life. He said dreams change when you grow up and get engaged. He said his sister Kelly was perfectly happy as an administrative assistant, and his mother Linda never worked outside the home, and they were both fulfilled women. The next few weeks were constant fights about this. He'd leave brochures for business programs on my desk. He'd point out every tired-looking female doctor we saw and say that could be me in 10 years, exhausted and alone. He introduced me to his coworker's wife who quit nursing school to support her husband, and she seemed so happy according to him. He'd make comments about how medical school would make me hard and unfeminine. He said patients don't respect female doctors anyway, so why put myself through that? He told his parents I was considering medical school like it was some crazy phase I was going through. His mother called me to say Ryan was worried about me making impulsive decisions. His father sent him articles about how women who earn more than their husbands have unhappy marriages. Ryan would forward them to me with messages like, something to think about. Then he started getting mean about it. When I studied for my biology final, he'd say I was wasting time on something I'd never use. When I shadowed doctors at the hospital, he'd ask if I was trying to find a rich doctor to replace him. When his friend asked about wedding planning, Ryan said we were waiting until I got over my doctor fantasy. He started calling it my little medical phase in front of people. The breaking point came when he told me he wouldn't pay for any wedding if I enrolled in medical school. He said he wasn't going to celebrate a marriage that was doomed from the start. He said if I loved him, I'd choose a career that supported our relationship instead of destroying it. He actually printed out applications for the local community college's hospitality program and filled out the first page for me. That's when I realized he'd never see me as his equal. So I enrolled in medical school anyway and didn't tell him. I deferred for 1 semester to figure things out. During that time, I got a job at the medical supply company where Ryan worked as a sales manager. He was thrilled, thinking I'd given up on medical school to be closer to him. I let him think that. I became the top-performing sales associate in 3 months, because unlike Ryan, I actually understood the medical equipment I was selling. Doctors started requesting me specifically because I could answer their questions with actual knowledge instead of rehearsed sales pitches. The company owner Douglas noticed and offered me a promotion to regional sales coordinator. Ryan was furious because that was the position he'd been wanting. Douglas told him maybe if he understood medicine better like I did, he'd be more qualified. At the company Christmas party, Douglas announced they were sponsoring one employee to attend medical school part-time while working. They'd created this program specifically for me because I'd increased their sales by 40% in 6 months by actually knowing what I was talking about. Ryan's face went white. The room goes completely silent after Douglas's announcement, and I can feel every single person staring at Ryan's frozen face. My heart is pounding so hard I'm sure people can hear it, but I keep my expression calm and professional, even though I want to jump up and scream with joy. Douglas continues explaining that the company will cover my tuition and books while I work reduced hours, and he emphasizes how my medical knowledge has transformed their client relationships and sales numbers. Ryan's coworker nudges him and whispers something, but Ryan just sits there staring at his plate like he's been turned to stone. I watch his jaw clench and unclench as Douglas keeps talking about how I increased sales by 40% in just 6 months by actually understanding the equipment instead of memorizing scripts. The other sales managers are nodding and smiling at me, and I can see some of them shooting looks at Ryan that make it clear they know exactly what this means. After the announcement, Several coworkers come over to congratulate me, shaking my hand and patting my shoulder. I notice Ryan slip out the side door without saying anything to anyone, and I feel a weird mix of satisfaction and relief that I don't have to face him right now. Douglas pulls me aside and says he wants to meet Monday morning to discuss the details of the sponsorship and my new schedule, and his genuine pride in my accomplishments makes me feel valued in a way Ryan never did. He tells me I've set a new standard for the sales team and that other employees are already asking about educational opportunities. I drive home alone that night, and the reality of everything hits me all at once. I'm going to medical school. I have a job that respects my abilities. I just watched Ryan's attitude blow up in his face in front of everyone we work with. My hands shake a little on the steering wheel as I pull into my driveway. I call my best friend and tell her everything, and she screams so loud with excitement that I have to hold the phone away from my ear. She keeps saying she knew I could do it, that she knew Ryan was wrong about me. Ryan doesn't come home that night, and I'm honestly relieved because I need time to process everything without him trying to manipulate the situation. I spend the evening looking at my medical school acceptance letter that I've kept hidden in my desk drawer for months, and I finally let myself feel the pure joy I felt the day it arrived. I read it 3 times, touching the paper like it might disappear if I'm not careful. Monday morning, I arrive at work early for my meeting with Douglas, and he has someone from HR there to go over my new contract and schedule. They've worked out a plan where I'll work 3 days a week handling major accounts and training new sales staff, which will cover my salary while leaving time for classes and studying. The HR person explains my benefits will continue, and I'll even get a small raise because of my new training responsibilities. I sign the papers and feel like I'm signing my way into a completely different life. Ryan shows up late to work looking like he didn't sleep, and he avoids making eye contact with me or anyone else. The office atmosphere is awkward because everyone knows what happened at the party, and I can hear people whispering about how he tried to hold me back from medical school. 2 of the younger sales associates stop by my desk to ask questions about the sponsorship program, and I notice Ryan watching from across the room with this dark expression on his face. During lunch, Kelly calls me, and I'm surprised because we've never been particularly close despite her being Ryan's sister. She tells me she heard what happened and that she's proud of me for not letting Ryan talk me out of my dreams. Her voice sounds different from usual, less careful and more honest. She admits she sometimes regrets not finishing her own degree when Ryan's parents pressured her to take the administrative job instead. She says watching me stand up to Ryan made her realize she'd been making excuses for years about why she couldn't go back to school. Ryan finally corners me in the break room that afternoon, and his face is a mixture of anger and embarrassment. He demands to know how long I've been planning this betrayal, his voice low and tight. I calmly tell him I didn't betray anyone. I just stopped letting him make my life decisions for me. He tries to turn it around and claim he was protecting me from making a mistake, that medical school will ruin my life just like he warned. I point out that I've already proven I can handle medical knowledge better than he can, and that his concern was never about me. It was about his own ego and control. His face goes red and he steps closer, and I can smell coffee on his breath. He says I'm being selfish and throwing away our future together for some stupid degree. I tell him the only future we had was one where I made myself smaller so he could feel bigger, and I'm done with that. He steps back when I finish speaking, and his hands clench into fists at his sides. The break room suddenly feels too small, and the fluorescent lights are buzzing too loud, and I can smell the burnt coffee someone left on the burner for too long. He opens his mouth like he's about to yell, but then closes it again and looks around like he's just remembered we're at work where anyone could walk in. His voice drops to an angry whisper, and he tells me we need couples counseling to work through this. He says we can't throw away 4 years together over a career disagreement. I feel something cold settle in my chest because he still doesn't get it. I tell him this isn't about the career. This is about him spending months telling me my brain is too female to handle complex subjects. I tell him that's not something counseling can fix because it's not a communication problem. It's a respect problem. He starts to argue, but I walk past him and go back to my desk and spend the rest of the afternoon responding to client emails while my hands shake slightly on the keyboard. That evening, I drive home and sit in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes before I can make myself go inside. I unlock the door and walk straight to the bedroom closet and pull out the empty boxes I've been storing on the top shelf. I start packing Ryan's things because I realize I can't live with someone who spent months trying to convince me I wasn't smart enough for my own dreams. I fold his shirts and put them in boxes and pack his shoes and his cologne and his collection of sales training books he never actually read. I'm taping up the 3rd box when I hear his key in the lock. He comes home and stops in the bedroom doorway and stares at the boxes stacked against the wall. His face goes pale and then red, and he asks what I'm doing. I tell him I'm packing his things because we're done. For the first time since this whole thing started, he seems to understand that this is actually over. He sits down on the edge of the bed and puts his head in his hands, and I keep packing. The next morning, he tries a different approach. He sits across from me at the kitchen table and his voice is calm and reasonable, and he suddenly claims he's always supported my medical school dreams. He says I'm misremembering his concerns, and that he was just worried about the workload and the stress. I pull out my phone and scroll through my voice memos and find the one I recorded 3 months ago. I hit play, and his own voice fills the kitchen, talking about how female doctors are unfeminine and unhappy, and how patients don't respect women in medicine. His face goes white as he listens to himself, and he can't deny his own words. He moves out that weekend and takes his boxes and his furniture and the coffee maker he bought last year. His parents call me multiple times trying to convince me to reconsider. They say Ryan is devastated and that I'm being cruel. Linda actually has the nerve to say I'm throwing away a good man over pride. I tell her that wanting to use my brain isn't pride, it's self-respect. She hangs up on me. 2 weeks pass in a blur of paperwork and apartment cleaning and preparing for the biggest change of my life. My first day of medical school arrives, and I wake up at 5 in the morning even though my first class isn't until 9. I drive to campus and park in the student lot and walk toward the medical education building with my new backpack and my orientation folder. I walk into the building feeling like I'm finally living the life I was supposed to have all along. The lobby is full of other first-year students who look excited and nervous, and nobody questions whether my female brain can handle the material. I find my assigned classroom and sit in the 3rd row, and a woman next to me introduces herself and asks what specialty I'm interested in. Balancing work and school turns out to be more challenging than I expected, but Douglas has been incredibly supportive. My coworkers step up to help cover accounts when I have exams, and they text me good luck messages before big tests. Ryan, meanwhile, has been moved to a different territory because too many clients were asking why I wasn't their representative anymore. I hear through office gossip that he complained to Douglas about the reassignment, but Douglas told him the clients make the requests, and the company follows them. 3 weeks into the semester, I run into one of Ryan's friends at a coffee shop near campus. He's waiting for his order, and I'm studying at a corner table, and he sees me and walks over looking uncomfortable. He sits down without asking and tells me awkwardly that Ryan has been telling people I cheated on him, and that's why we broke up. I'm angry but not surprised. Ryan can't admit that his own behavior destroyed the relationship, so he has to make me the villain in his version. During my anatomy class the following week, I realize I'm actually understanding the material better than I expected, because of my 6 months selling medical equipment. My professor is explaining surgical instrument design, and I raise my hand and add details about how different specialties prefer different handle grips based on the procedures they perform. She stops and asks how I know that, and I explain about my sales background. She's impressed by how I connected practical application to theory, and after class she tells me that real-world experience makes better doctors. Douglas asks me to help train the new sales associate who's replacing my old territory. I spend a day showing her how understanding the medical side makes the sales side easier. I explain the anatomy behind why certain instruments are shaped specific ways, and how to talk to surgeons about their actual needs, instead of just reading product specifications. She tells me the other sales managers just memorize scripts, but I taught her to actually understand what the equipment does, and why doctors need it. Ryan's replacement in the regional coordinator position starts the following Monday. Her name is Sienna Hopkins, and she has a nursing background and 10 years of hospital experience. She and I immediately connect over our medical knowledge during the morning meeting. After the meeting ends, she stops by my desk and tells me Douglas specifically wanted someone with healthcare experience after seeing how much it mattered. She says she's excited to work with someone who understands both sides of the business. 3 months pass, and I'm maintaining good grades while still doing well at my reduced work schedule. My anatomy professor writes me an email praising my last exam score, and my biochemistry lab partner tells me I explain concepts better than the teaching assistant. I study with 2 other women in my class who are also engaged, and their partners text them encouragement during study sessions and bring them coffee during late-night cramming. One of them shows me a message from her fiancé saying he's proud of how hard she's working, and I realize how different that is from what Ryan used to say. Her partner thinks her ambition is attractive instead of threatening. The other woman's fiancé is also in graduate school, and they quiz each other on their respective subjects and treat their education like a team effort. Watching them makes me understand that Ryan's attitude wasn't normal or protective like he claimed. It was controlling and small and meant to keep me from growing past him. I hear through the office that Ryan is dating someone new. Her name comes up during a sales meeting when someone mentions she works reception at one of our client hospitals. Sienna tells me later that the woman never went to college and works the front desk answering phones and scheduling appointments. Part of me feels bad for her because I know exactly what Ryan will do. He'll be sweet at first, and then slowly start suggesting she doesn't need to take that online course or apply for that promotion. He'll tell her she's perfect just the way she is while making sure she stays exactly where he can manage her. But mostly, I just feel grateful that I'm not her anymore. Kelly texts me out of nowhere on a Tuesday afternoon asking if I want to meet for coffee. I'm surprised because we haven't talked much since the breakup beyond awkward small talk at the company Christmas party. I agree, and we meet at a place near my apartment on Saturday morning. She looks nervous when I sit down, and she starts talking fast like she's been practicing what to say. She tells me she's been thinking about our last conversation and about how I didn't let Ryan stop me from medical school. She admits she's been working as an administrative assistant for 10 years, but she actually wants to be an accountant. She says she's good with numbers and always has been, but Ryan's parents convinced her that administrative work was more appropriate and stable. She enrolled in night classes 2 weeks ago to finish her degree, and she wanted to tell me because watching me stand up to Ryan gave her the courage to do it. I'm shocked and proud and a little sad that she spent a decade in a job she settled for. We talk for 2 hours about her classes and her goals, and I realize Ryan's whole family has these weird ideas about what women should and shouldn't do. His mother never worked, and his father thinks that's the ideal. Kelly says she used to want to go to business school, but Linda told her that accounting was too much math for most women to handle. The same garbage Ryan told me about medical school being too complex for my female brain. It's a family pattern of keeping women small and manageable. During my biochemistry unit on metabolic pathways, I hit a wall. The material is dense and complicated, and I spend 3 nights in a row studying the same chapter without it clicking. I sit at my desk at 2 in the morning staring at diagrams of the Krebs cycle, and I think about Ryan saying medical school would be too hard for me. I wonder if maybe he was right and I'm just too stubborn to admit it. Then I remember that 6 months ago, I didn't know anything about medical equipment beyond basic first aid. I taught myself enough about surgical tools and diagnostic machines and patient monitoring systems to outsell people who'd been doing it for years. I learned complex medical terminology and anatomy and how different specialties use different equipment. If I could teach myself that in half a year while working full-time, then I can learn biochemistry. I make flashcards and watch video tutorials and ask my lab partner to explain it differently, and by the end of the week, it clicks. I ace the exam, and my professor writes excellent work on the top of my paper. Douglas emails me asking if I can present at the next company-wide meeting about how medical knowledge improves client relationships. He wants me to show the sales team specific examples of how understanding the science helped me solve problems and close deals. I spend a week putting together a presentation with real cases from my time in sales. I include the time a surgeon was frustrated with a laparoscopic tool, and I was able to suggest an alternative based on the specific procedure he was doing. I show how knowing anatomy helped me demonstrate equipment more effectively than just reading specifications. I explain how understanding sterilization processes helped me address a hospital's concerns about infection control. Ryan is required to attend the meeting because it's mandatory for all sales staff. I watch him walk in and sit in the back row with his arms crossed. Douglas introduces me and I start presenting, and I can see Ryan's face getting tighter as I go through each example. I'm demonstrating expertise he never developed because he relied on memorized scripts instead of actual understanding. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Other salespeople are taking notes and asking questions, and Ryan just sits there looking like he wants to disappear. After my presentation, 2 other employees approach Douglas about educational opportunities. One wants to take nursing classes, and another wants to study medical technology. Douglas is thrilled and tells the whole room he's considering making the sponsorship program permanent because of how much it's improved the company's performance. He says I changed the culture around professional development and made everyone think about growing their skills. He thanks me in front of everyone, and I realize my impact goes beyond just my own success. I'm changing how the whole company thinks about education and expertise. My medical school advisor calls me into her office during my 4th month and asks about my background. I explain about the medical supply sales and how I got into it, and she listens carefully, taking notes. She tells me she says most doctors don't understand the business side of medical equipment, and most salespeople don't understand the medical side, but I have both. She thinks I could have a career designing or improving surgical tools or working with companies to develop better equipment. The idea excites me because it would combine everything I've learned into something I never thought about before. It's a path I wouldn't have found if Ryan had convinced me to take hospitality management. Ryan's new girlfriend sends me a friend request on social media, and I accept it because I'm curious. Her profile is public, and I can see her posts about taking online business courses through a community college program. She seems excited about it in her posts, but then I see Ryan's comments underneath. He writes things like, "Don't stress yourself out with this," and "You're already perfect without a degree," and "Make sure you're not neglecting us for homework." The same controlling garbage he used to say to me. I think about messaging her to warn her, but I know she won't believe me. She probably thinks he's being protective and caring. She has to figure it out herself like I did. 6 months into medical school, I get an email asking if I want to speak at a prospective student event about balancing work and education. They want me to share my experience for people considering medical school while working. I agree and spend the evening talking to a room full of nervous potential students about my journey. I tell them honestly that I almost gave up my dreams because someone convinced me I wasn't capable. I explain about working at the medical supply company and how that knowledge helped me in school. I talk about the challenges of balancing everything and how support from my employer made it possible. After my talk, several young women come up to thank me for sharing my story. One of them pulls me aside and tells me her boyfriend has been saying similar things about her nursing school plans. He keeps telling her it's too hard and she should do something easier, and she was starting to believe him. She says hearing my story reminded her that his doubts are about him, not about her. I give her my email and tell her to reach out if she needs encouragement. The company Christmas party arrives again exactly 1 year after Douglas announced the medical school sponsorship. I walk into the same event space wearing a dress I bought with my first scholarship check. Douglas finds me right away and pulls me aside before the official program starts. He tells me he's going to acknowledge my successful first semester publicly, and he wants to make sure I'm comfortable with that. I tell him I am, and I mean it. When he gets up to give his annual speech, he talks about company growth and client satisfaction, and then he mentions the educational sponsorship program. He says I completed my first semester of medical school with excellent grades while still performing well at work. He says I proved that investing in employees who want to grow is good for everyone. The room applauds and several coworkers come over to congratulate me afterward. Ryan doesn't attend this year's party. I heard through Sienna that he told Douglas he had a family obligation, but everyone knows he just didn't want to be there. I don't miss his presence at all. Last year at this party, I was nervous and excited and watching his face go white with shock. This year, I'm just proud and grateful and looking forward to what comes next. The grades arrive in my student portal 3 weeks after final exams end. I'm sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open and my hands shake when I click on the link to view my results. The page loads slowly, and then I see them listed one by one. Anatomy and Physiology. A. Medical Terminology. A. Introduction to Clinical Practice. A. Biochemistry. A minus. My overall grade point average puts me on the dean's list for academic excellence. I stare at the screen for a full minute because part of me still can't believe I actually did this. I print out the official certificate that comes with the dean's list recognition, and I take it to the frame shop that same afternoon. The woman behind the counter asks if it's for my daughter, and I tell her no, it's mine, and she congratulates me with genuine excitement. I hang the framed certificate in my home office, right above my desk where I used to sit and listen to Ryan tell me I was wasting my time studying subjects my female brain couldn't handle. Every time I look at it now, I remember his face going white at that Christmas party. My parents drive up the following weekend to take me out for a celebration dinner. My dad hugs me in the restaurant parking lot and tells me he's proud of me for not letting anyone dim my light. My mom cries a little and says she knew I could do it, and we spend the whole meal talking about my favorite classes and what's coming next semester. They ask about work and how Douglas has been supporting my schedule, and I tell them about the reduced hours and the training I've been doing with new sales staff. My dad raises his glass and makes a toast to his daughter, the future doctor, and I feel a warmth in my chest that I never felt during all those months with Ryan. Sienna and I start having lunch together every Thursday at the cafe near the office. She's easy to talk to and doesn't make me feel like I have to prove myself the way Ryan always did. During one of these lunches, she tells me something I didn't know. Douglas consulted with her before creating the medical school sponsorship program because he wanted to make sure the work and school balance was actually possible. She looked at my sales numbers and my client feedback and told him I was worth the investment. She shares that she quit a previous job where her boss made comments about women in healthcare similar to Ryan's attitude. He used to say things like women were too emotional to make good medical decisions and that nursing was fine for women, but anything beyond that was pushing it. She says she appreciates working somewhere that values expertise over gender, and she thanks me for proving that medical knowledge makes better salespeople regardless of who has it. I realize that her friendship means more to me than Ryan's support ever did, because she actually sees me as capable instead of someone who needs to be protected from my own ambitions. My clinical observation day at the hospital happens on a Tuesday morning in late January. I'm wearing scrubs for the first time, and I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I always wanted to be. I'm walking through the cardiology wing when I hear someone call my name. I turn around and see Dr. Reeves, one of the doctors who used to request me specifically when I was selling equipment. He's delighted when I tell him I'm in medical school now, and he says he always knew I had the mind for it. He offers to let me shadow him during his surgeries over the next few months, and he tells me I was the only sales rep who ever actually understood what they needed and why. He says most reps just read from spec sheets, but I could explain how the equipment would integrate with their existing systems and what the practical benefits would be for patient outcomes. I accept his offer immediately, and we exchange contact information so he can add me to his surgery schedule. Walking out of the hospital that day, I feel like everything is finally falling into place. Ryan's parents show up at my apartment on a Saturday afternoon without calling first. I open the door and find Linda and Ryan's father standing there looking uncomfortable. Linda asks if they can come in, and I step aside to let them enter, even though I don't really want to have this conversation. Linda sits on my couch and starts talking about how Ryan is struggling and how the family is worried about him. She says he's been distant and won't talk about what happened between us. Then she pivots to telling me I made a mistake leaving him, that he was just trying to look out for my best interests. I stay calm and explain that their son spent months telling me my brain couldn't handle medical school. I gesture to the framed Dean's List certificate on my wall and tell them I'm currently proving him wrong with every passing day. I explain that he didn't want a partner. He wanted someone small enough to make him feel big. Ryan's father shifts in his seat and tries to say that Ryan just wanted me to have a good life, but I cut him off. I tell them their son told me patients don't respect female doctors and that medical school would make me hard and unfeminine. I tell them he printed out hospitality management applications and filled out the first page for me like I was a child who couldn't make my own decisions. Linda's face goes red and she stands up and says they should leave. They walk to the door and Ryan's father mutters something about young people not understanding compromise. I close the door behind them and feel relieved that I don't have to pretend to be smaller than I am anymore. My second semester starts with more advanced courses that challenge me in new ways. Pathophysiology requires me to understand disease processes at a cellular level, and pharmacology involves memorizing hundreds of drug interactions and mechanisms. I'm challenged but never overwhelmed because I learned during the first semester how to manage my time and ask for help when I need it. My study group has become close friends who support each other through the difficult material. We meet twice a week at the library and we take turns explaining concepts to each other until everyone understands. One of my study partners is engaged to a teacher who brings us coffee during late-night study sessions and never complains about the time she spends on schoolwork. Another is married to a nurse who helps her practice physical exam techniques at home. I'm grateful for a community that lifts each other up instead of tearing each other down. We celebrate each other's successes and help each other through the hard days, and I realize this is what a supportive environment actually looks like. My professor assigns a research project on medical device innovation during my second semester, and I immediately think about my sales background. I explained to her after class that I used to sell medical equipment, and that I still have connections with doctors and medical practices throughout the region. Her eyes light up and she tells me this could be turned into a thesis project, bridges clinical practice and device development. She says most medical students only see devices from the clinical side, but I understand both the business and medical perspectives. She suggests I could research how feedback from actual users could improve device design and safety. I spend that evening making a list of doctors I could interview and equipment I could analyze, and I feel excited about combining my past experience with my current education in a way that creates something valuable. Douglas calls me into his office on a Wednesday morning and tells me the company wants to feature my story in their recruiting materials. They want to show potential employees that the company is committed to professional development and that they invest in people who want to grow. I agree because I want other women to see that it's possible to pursue big goals even when people doubt you. The recruiting director interviews me the following week, asking about my journey from sales associate to medical student. I'm honest about how close I came to giving up my dreams. I tell her about the hospitality management applications Ryan filled out for me and about the months of being told my brain couldn't handle complex subjects. I explain how Douglas recognized my potential and created an opportunity that changed my life. She records the whole interview and tells me it's going to inspire a lot of people. I leave her office feeling like maybe my struggle can help someone else find the courage to pursue what they actually want. Kelly calls me on a Thursday evening and her voice sounds different from usual. She tells me she got accepted into an accounting program at the community college and she's going to start classes in the fall. Then her voice breaks a little and she says her parents are upset with her for going back to school at 32. Linda told her she's too old to start over and that she should focus on finding a husband instead of chasing career dreams. Kelly thanks me for showing her it's never too late to pursue what you actually want. I remind her that she's the one who made the brave choice, that I just happened to go first. I tell her about my own doubts and fears and how I almost let Ryan convince me to give up. She laughs and says we're both proof that the women in Ryan's family are stronger than anyone gave them credit for. We talk for over an hour about her accounting classes and my medical courses, and I feel proud of both of us for refusing to stay small. During my cardiology unit in the second semester, we're studying how heart monitors work and how they detect different types of arrhythmias. The professor is explaining the technical aspects of electrode placement and signal processing, and suddenly everything clicks in my brain. I used to sell these exact monitors, and I remember the specifications and the technology behind them. I raise my hand and explain how the monitors use multiple leads to create a complete picture of the heart's electrical activity, and I describe how the newer models filter out motion artifacts that used to cause false alarms. My professor stops and asks me to come to the front of the class and explain the practical application to everyone. I walk up and draw diagrams on the board showing how the leads are positioned and why each position captures different information. Several classmates tell me afterward that my explanation made more sense than the textbook because I connected the theory to how the equipment actually works in hospitals. I realize my path to medical school wasn't traditional, but it actually gives me advantages in some areas that other students don't have. I'm helping Sienna with a presentation at a medical conference in March when I see Ryan across the exhibit hall. He's walking between booths looking at new equipment, and he clearly hasn't seen me yet. My company has a booth near the main entrance, and Sienna and I are setting up our display when Ryan walks past. He stops when he recognizes me, and his face goes through several expressions in quick succession. He looks uncomfortable and tries to avoid me by turning down a different aisle, but the conference isn't that big, and we end up in the same elevator 20 minutes later. The silence is thick and awkward, and I can feel him looking at me from the corner of his eye. Finally, as we're approaching the main floor, he mutters that I look like I'm doing well. I turn to him and simply say thank you, and then the doors open, and I walk out without looking back. Sienna is waiting for me near the registration desk, and she raises her eyebrows in a question. I shake my head and tell her it was nothing important, and we head back to our booth to finish the presentation. The rest of the conference goes smoothly, and I don't see Ryan again. I realize I don't feel angry or hurt anymore when I think about him. I just feel grateful that I chose myself instead of choosing to be small enough for someone else's comfort. My anatomy professor pulls me aside after class in late April and asks if I'd be interested in a summer research position. She explains that the hospital is testing new surgical devices, and they need someone who understands both the medical theory and the practical application. I tell her I used to sell medical equipment, and her eyes light up. She says that's exactly the perspective they need because most medical students can explain how devices should work in theory, but have no idea how they actually function in operating rooms. The interview happens 3 days later in a conference room at the hospital. I sit across from 2 surgeons and a research coordinator who ask me questions about device design and surgical procedures. When they bring out a sample laparoscopic tool, I explain not just what it does, but also the common technical issues surgeons face with that particular model and how the manufacturer tried to fix them in the newer version. One of the surgeons leans back in his chair and says they've interviewed 8 candidates and nobody else could discuss the practical sales perspective like I just did. They offer me the position right there with a stipend that will let me cut my work hours almost in half next year. I walk out of that hospital feeling like everything is finally coming together the way it was supposed to. 2 weeks later, Sienna calls me into her office at the medical supply company. She's been promoted to director of sales, and she wants to talk about changes she's planning. She sits behind her new desk and tells me that watching my success over the past year proved something important to her. She says the company has been training sales staff to memorize scripts and product specifications, but I showed that actually understanding the medical science makes people better at their jobs. She's implementing new training programs that focus on medical education, instead of just sales techniques. She credits me directly in the company-wide email announcing the changes, and over the next few days, 3 of my former colleagues stop by my desk to thank me. One of them says he always felt stupid trying to answer doctors' questions with rehearsed responses, but now the company is actually teaching them the science behind what they sell. The medical school invites me to speak on a Women in Medicine panel in early May. I stand at a podium in front of a packed auditorium and tell my story about almost giving up because someone convinced me my brain couldn't handle the complexity. I talk about the brochures left on my desk and the statistics about divorce rates and the printed application for hospitality management with the first page already filled out. The room is completely silent while I speak. During the question and answer session, a first-year student raises her hand and says her father told her medical school would make her unmarriageable. Another woman stands up and shares that her husband said she was being selfish for prioritizing school over starting a family. A professor in the back row talks about colleagues who questioned whether she belonged in academic medicine. We spend an extra 30 minutes past the scheduled end time because so many people want to share their experiences. Afterward, at least a dozen students come up to thank me for being honest about how close I came to choosing the smaller life someone else wanted for me. My research position starts in June, and within 2 months we've collected enough data for a paper. I spend nights after work analyzing surgeon feedback about device design flaws and writing up our findings. The lead researcher adds my name as second author on the paper about improving surgical device design based on real-world usage patterns. When the article gets accepted to a medical journal in September, I stare at my name in print and think about how I'm not even done with my second year of medical school yet. Douglas asks for a copy of the article, and he frames it and hangs it in the company lobby next to the photos of top sales performers. I stand in front of that frame one morning before work and remember the girl who almost enrolled in hospitality management to save a relationship with someone who thought she wasn't smart enough for anything more challenging. Kelly sends me a text in October inviting me to her graduation from the accounting certificate program. I take the afternoon off and sit in the audience of a hotel conference room watching her walk across the small stage to receive her certificate. She's beaming, and I cheer louder than anyone else there. Afterward, she introduces me to her new boyfriend, who teaches math at the local high school. He shakes my hand and tells me Kelly talks about me all the time. He says he thinks it's attractive that she's ambitious and wants to keep learning and growing. I watch them together and see how he looks at her with genuine pride and respect, and I feel so happy that she found someone who appreciates her for being smart instead of someone who wants her to stay small. The workplace gossip reaches me in November through one of my former colleagues. Ryan's girlfriend broke up with him. She apparently told several people at the office that he was controlling and dismissive whenever she talked about her career goals. She worked as a receptionist at one of our client offices, and she'd mentioned wanting to get her real estate license, and Ryan kept telling her it was a waste of money, and she wouldn't be good at sales anyway. My colleague says the girlfriend told her friend who told someone else that Ryan made her feel stupid for having ambitions. I feel this wave of relief wash over me because it confirms what I already knew. His behavior wasn't about me specifically, or about medical school being too demanding. It's a pattern of how he treats women who want more than he thinks they should have. He needs to keep his partners smaller than him because he can't handle being with someone who might outgrow him or become more successful. My third year of medical school starts in August, and I begin clinical rotations at the hospital, where I used to shadow doctors during my sales days. I'm assigned to the cardiology unit for my first rotation, and on my second day, one of the attending physicians stops mid-rounds and stares at me. He asks if I used to sell heart monitors, and when I confirm it, his whole face breaks into a smile. He tells the other residents that I was the only sales rep who actually understood what they needed and why they needed it. Another doctor recognizes me during lunch and says he always knew I had the mind of a doctor, not a salesperson. He says he could tell from the questions I asked and the way I explained equipment functions that I was thinking like a clinician even back then. Douglas announces his retirement at a company meeting in September. He's 72 and ready to spend time with his grandchildren. He names Sienna as the new company president, and everyone applauds. At her first official meeting as president, Sienna announces that she's expanding the educational sponsorship program from 1 employee per year to 5. She stands at the front of the conference room and tells everyone that investing in people's growth isn't just good ethics, it's good business. She says I proved that educated employees bring more value to the company and to their clients. She credits me with inspiring the change in company culture, from a place that valued sales numbers to a place that values knowledge and expertise. During my surgery rotation in October, I assist with a procedure using laparoscopic equipment I used to sell. The surgeon is working to remove a gallbladder when the camera starts showing a weird flickering pattern on the monitor. The scrub nurse is about to call for a replacement when I mention that this particular model has a known issue with the connection port. I explain how to reset it by unplugging the cable and reconnecting it in a specific sequence. The surgeon follows my instructions and the image clears immediately. After the surgery, he pulls me aside in the hallway and asks about my background. When I explain about my sales experience, he says my path is unusual, but it makes me a more well-rounded doctor. He says most medical students only see equipment as tools, but I understand the engineering and the business side too. My Step 1 medical board exam scores arrive in November. I'm sitting at my kitchen table when I open the email and see that I scored in the 90th percentile. I think about Ryan telling me medical school was too complex for my female brain. I think about him saying I'd never make it through and that I was wasting my time studying subjects I'd never use. I print out the score report and frame it. I hang it on my wall next to my Dean's List certificate from first semester, creating this visual record of everything I was always capable of achieving. The wall becomes proof that the only thing holding me back was believing someone else's limited vision of what I could accomplish. My advisor calls me into her office in early March, and she closes the door behind me with this excited look on her face. She pulls up a document on her computer and turns the screen toward me. She explains that there's a new residency program starting next year, focused on surgical device innovation, which is basically a specialty that combines surgery with engineering and device development. She says my name came up in discussions with the program directors because of my published research and my background in medical sales. She tells me my combination of clinical skills, research experience, and real-world understanding of how medical devices actually get used makes me an ideal candidate for this program. I feel my stomach flip because this sounds like exactly the kind of career path I never knew existed, but now can't imagine doing anything else. She says the program is extremely competitive with only 4 spots nationwide, but she thinks I have a strong chance if I apply. I leave her office and immediately start researching the program, reading about how residents work with engineers and surgeons to improve existing devices and develop new ones. I think about how Ryan wanted me to give up medicine entirely, and now I'm being considered for a program that uses every single part of my journey, including the sales work he thought was settling. The graduation ceremony for the 4th-year medical students happens in May, and I attend even though I still have 2 more years left. I sit in the auditorium watching them walk across the stage in their white coats, and I imagine myself standing up there in 2 years receiving my own diploma. The ceremony feels long, but I don't mind, because I keep thinking about how close I came to never experiencing this at all. After the ceremony ends, I'm standing in the lobby when a woman approaches me. She's wearing her new white coat and holding her diploma, and she tells me her name is Amanda. She says she heard me speak at the Women in Medicine panel 2 years ago, the one where I talked about almost giving up medical school because someone told me I wasn't capable. She says she was struggling that semester and seriously considering dropping out because her own family kept telling her she was wasting her time. She says hearing my story about proving Ryan wrong gave her the courage to keep going, and now she's graduating and starting her residency in pediatrics. I feel tears starting and I hug her and she thanks me for being honest about how hard it was. She says knowing that someone else fought through the doubt and made it gave her permission to fight too. Sienna calls me in June and asks if I have time to meet for coffee, and when we sit down she tells me something happened at work. She explains that Ryan got demoted from his sales manager position after multiple women filed complaints about his attitude and comments. She says the complaints weren't about anything he did to me specifically, but about how he treats female colleagues in general. One woman reported that he told her she should focus on getting married instead of trying for a promotion. Another said he made comments about women being too emotional for leadership roles. Sienna says she reviewed all the complaints and talked to HR, and they decided he needed to step back from management. He's been moved to a regular sales position with no direct reports. She tells me she's implemented mandatory training for all managers about respect and workplace equality, and several women have told her they feel more comfortable speaking up now. I tell Sienna I don't take pleasure in Ryan's struggles, which is mostly true. But I also feel this satisfaction knowing that his behavior finally caught up with him. I think about all the times he told me I was being too sensitive or overreacting, and now other women are saying the same things I experienced. Sienna says the company culture has changed significantly since I started, and she credits me with showing them that expertise matters more than gender. My research mentor emails me in July asking me to come to her lab, and when I arrive, she offers me a position for my entire 4th year. She explains that she's received a grant to study medical device safety based on real-world usage data, which is exactly the kind of work I've been doing in my research. She says the position comes with enough funding that I can quit my sales job completely and focus entirely on school and research. I feel this weight lift off my shoulders because balancing work and school has been manageable but exhausting. She tells me the research will strengthen my residency applications and give me more publications. I accept immediately, and then go tell Douglas that I need to resign from the company. He's not surprised and actually seems happy for me. He insists on throwing me a goodbye party and the entire sales team shows up. People take turns sharing stories about things I taught them, and one guy says, I'm the reason he went back to school to get his nursing degree. Another woman says watching me balance everything made her realize she could go back for her MBA. Douglas gives a speech about how I changed the company's approach to sales and professional development, and he says hiring me was one of the best decisions he ever made. I look around the room at all these people I've worked with for almost 4 years, and I realize I made a real impact here beyond just my own success. My surgery rotation starts in September, and on the 2nd week, I scrub in on a cardiac procedure. The patient needs a valve replacement, and I'm standing across from the surgeon watching her work. She's using a specific type of catheter system that I used to sell, and I know every detail about how it functions. Halfway through the procedure, she pauses and asks me about device placement. She says she knows my background and wants my opinion on whether the angle looks right. I study the monitor showing the catheter position and suggest adjusting it slightly based on the device specifications I remember. She follows my advice and the adjustment improves the image quality immediately. The rest of the procedure goes smoothly, and afterward in the hallway she pulls off her surgical cap and tells me I'm going to be an excellent surgeon. She says most medical students only see the devices as tools, but I understand the engineering and the limitations. She says that kind of knowledge makes better doctors, because we know what the equipment can and can't do. I feel proud of my unconventional path for maybe the first time, instead of feeling like I took the long way around. Kelly calls me in October and she's crying, but this time they're happy tears. She tells me she got her first accounting job at a firm downtown. She says the firm specifically values continuing education, and they're going to help pay for her to finish her degree. She's been working as an administrative assistant for 10 years, and now she finally has a job that uses her actual skills and interests. She says watching me fight for my dreams gave her permission to fight for hers. She tells me she spent so long believing that her role was to support other people's ambitions, and she forgot she was allowed to have her own. I tell her I'm proud of her courage, and I mean it. She says our family still doesn't understand why she's making things harder for herself, but her new boyfriend supports her completely. She met him at her night classes, and he's studying to be a teacher. She says he thinks it's attractive that she's ambitious and smart, and I'm so happy she found someone who appreciates her instead of trying to keep her small. I spend November working on my residency applications, and the process feels overwhelming but exciting. My application includes my published research on device safety, detailed descriptions of my medical sales background, and letters of recommendation from doctors who knew me in both roles. One of my recommendation letters comes from the surgeon I worked with during that cardiac procedure. Another comes from a doctor who used to request me specifically when I was doing sales calls. My advisor reviews my application before I submit it and tells me I'm one of the strongest candidates she's ever mentored. She says my unique combination of experiences makes me stand out from other applicants who only have traditional medical school backgrounds. I feel confident about my future in a way I never did when I was trying to shrink myself to fit Ryan's limited vision of who I should be. I think about how he wanted me to go into hospitality management, and now I'm applying to one of the most competitive residency programs in the country. The residency match results come in March, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table when I open the email. I matched with my top choice program at a hospital known for surgical device innovation. I start crying immediately and call my parents. My mom answers and I tell her the news, and she starts crying too. She says she remembers how close I came to giving up on medical school, how I almost let Ryan convince me I wasn't smart enough. My dad gets on the phone and tells me he's proud of me, and hearing him say that makes me cry harder. The program director emails me later that day and says they were impressed by my unique background and perspective. She says they specifically wanted someone who understood both the clinical side and the business side of medical devices. She tells me I'll be working with a team that includes surgeons, engineers, and researchers, and my sales experience will help me communicate between all those different groups. I think about Ryan's face going white at that Christmas party announcement, and I realize that moment 4 years ago wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. My medical school graduation arrives in May, and I wake up that morning feeling like I'm living in a dream. I put on my white coat and drive to the ceremony venue. The auditorium is packed with families and friends, and I scan the audience looking for my people. I spot Douglas and Sienna sitting together near the front. Kelly is there with her boyfriend. My parents are in the second row looking proud. Several of my former sales colleagues scattered throughout the crowd. I line up with my classmates backstage, and we're all nervous and excited. When they call my name, I walk across the stage and receive my diploma. The audience applauds, and I look out at everyone who supported me. I think about Ryan's face at that Christmas party, how shocked he looked when Douglas announced the sponsorship program. That moment felt like vindication at the time, but now I realize it was just the starting point. Everything that came after, all the hard work and late nights studying and balancing school with work, that's what actually mattered. The dean announces that I'll be giving the class representative speech, and I walk to the podium feeling my heart pound. I look out at the audience and start talking about the importance of believing in yourself even when others doubt you. I tell them that someone once told me medical school was too complex for my female brain. The audience gasps, and I hear people whispering. I pause and then hold up my diploma and say this is my response to that assessment. The auditorium erupts in cheers and applause. People stand up clapping, and I see my mom wiping tears from her face. Douglas is grinning, and Sienna is on her feet cheering. Kelly is clapping so hard her hands must hurt. I finish my speech talking about how we all have people who doubt us, but we can't let their limitations become our own. I say that every person graduating today fought through challenges and proved they were capable of more than someone told them they could achieve. When I step down from the podium, my classmates hug me, and several people tell me they needed to hear that message. I realize my story isn't just about proving Ryan wrong anymore. It's about proving to myself that I was always capable of exactly what I set out to do. I walk into the hospital on my first day of residency, and the surgical device innovation department feels different from the other floors. The walls are covered with blueprints and prototype sketches, and there's a lab space where residents can test equipment modifications. My attending physician, Dr. Reeves, meets me in her office and tells me she requested me specifically for her service. She says my published research on improving surgical device design caught her attention, and my combination of sales experience and clinical training makes me exactly what their program needs. She hands me my schedule and explains I'll be splitting time between surgeries, research projects, and consulting with device manufacturers. I feel this rush of pride thinking about how every choice I made led to this moment. Even the painful ones like leaving Ryan and working those exhausting years balancing school and sales. Dr. Reeves shows me to my desk in the residence area and introduces me to the team, and everyone is friendly and excited to have someone who understands both the medical side and the business side of their work. My phone buzzes during lunch, and it's a text from Kelly with a photo attached. She's standing in front of an office door with her name on it and the title Junior Accountant underneath. Her message says we both made it to where we were supposed to be all along, and she's proud of us for not letting anyone convince us we weren't capable. I save the photo, and later that week I get it printed and framed and hang it next to my medical school diploma on my apartment wall. Looking at both frames together makes me think about how our successes feel connected, because we both learned the same lesson about not accepting other people's limitations as our own. 6 months pass, and I'm thriving in ways I never imagined possible. I'm contributing to research that will change surgical outcomes for thousands of patients, and I'm developing modifications to devices that surgeons actually want to use. I think about the version of myself who almost enrolled in hospitality management to save a relationship with someone who thought my brain was too female for complex subjects. I'm grateful I found the courage to choose myself instead, because this life is challenging and demanding and absolutely fulfilling, and it's exactly the one I was always meant to live. And that's a wrap on this story. I love when simple moments turn into something meaningful. If it gave you even one good idea, that's what matters.